Eternights is an indie game that promises an interesting blend of action game and dating game elements all wrapped in a post-apocalyptic bow. But does it provide a mix of flavors that highlight each element's strong points? Or do we get a garbled, unpalatable concoction of a game? Let's find out! This is the video version of a review on our website, links in the description below. We start our story with two losers, main character and his best friend Chani. They're desperate for a date and have signed up for a new dating app. Our MC eventually gets a match and gets messaged by an eccentric girl.
こんばんは。エロい写真見たい?
They all agree to meet the next day when, all of a sudden, the end of the world knocks on their door and the people of the city start turning into monsters. They head to a shelter that ultimately gets compromised, and while running away from danger, they encounter a girl fighting off the monsters. That's when MC's hand gets cut off by said girl without explanation. This leads to a dream sequence where a mysterious figure, who is later revealed as Lux, explains that she was the one who contacted the MC through a dating app and that he's actually chosen to possess a great power that could save the world. The MC now gets a glowing, transforming hand to replace the one he lost. With this power, you can stand up to the monsters and figure out exactly what is going on in this apocalypse. The story starts out interesting, leaving a lot of questions to be answered throughout the story. But, sorry to say, most of them never get answered. This is probably our biggest gripe with the story, maybe even the whole game. It pulls out a lot of terminology and world building that doesn't get fleshed out very well and leaves us wanting more explanation by the end of the game. They never really explained what the drug Eternights was all about or how it relates to the story. Lux and Umbra, the big underlying foundation of the story, are never really explained. Why are they there? Why are they in opposition? Who knows? How is this random train parked in the subway equipped with all the high-tech gadgetry needed to move through the apocalypse when it just happened in the blink of an eye? Was the government aware this was going to happen at some point? And the most important question of all, why do mutant abominations use Stepmania as their lock system? There's so much to unpack that doesn't get satisfactorily answered. So much so that, at least in our experience, the supposedly emotional ending was dampened because we were so wrapped up in the confusion. However, there are a few things that it does do well. The characters are all relatable to a degree. They all have either lost something or are going through a crisis during this disaster.
いろいろなことがあったから。
Whether it's guilt, loss, feeling useless, or a longing to go back to normalcy, these make our characters feel real and human, despite their otherworldly situation. The glimpses of normalcy we see when our characters interact during the dating sequences or filler cutscenes are actually the most enjoyable moments of the game, along with the occasional unhinged dialogue options. So maybe an option for the devs next time is playing to their strengths and just making a straight up slice of life dating sim. Like how we'll play to our strengths of asking you to like and subscribe. Again, there are two main aspects to the gameplay: action and dating. The game takes heavy influence from the Persona series, where the dating system of the game, bond system, affects the battle system. The closer you are to a person, the more skills you unlock, and the better you'll fare in battle. Let's tackle the combat portion of the gameplay first, shall we? The combat system gives you what you'd usually expect from an action game. You beat up bad guys, and that's it. The game tries to spice up the battle mechanics by adding elemental barriers around the enemies. These barriers can be broken once you hit it with a skill with the opposing element. Fire breaks ice and ice breaks fire, for example. Other than that, it's not anything special. In fact, we have a few complaints about the combat system. First off, the lock-on mechanic isn't as polished as it should be. It requires a little bit of patience to lock onto the appropriate enemy, and can also be easily broken if it's obstructed by the smallest obstacle. Combat is supposed to be fast-paced, but once you activate a skill, the pace slows down to a crawl and just kills the momentum. The battle animations also dampen the supposedly cool skill sequences, but we'll talk about that in a later section. Let's take a look at the dating section next. You might ask, where do you find space for dating while dungeon crawling in a post-apocalyptic world? Well, again, Eternights takes inspiration from Persona, and it employs the calendar and time system it has. Days are separated into daytime and nighttime, and major story events take place on specific days. You have until that specific day to finish your dungeon progress. If you finish your dungeon early, you can spend your free time getting closer to your apocalypse crew during the day by going on dates. Increasing your bond with the party unlocks active skills and passive skills that increase your stats. The dating system itself utilizes the usual dating game elements of choosing dialogue options that curry favor with your partner, and progression that's gated by social parameter requirements. Nothing special here, but why change a formula that works? Do keep in mind though that the ending does change depending on who you choose to be your romantic interest, so choose wisely. There's also a mechanic of searching for supplies during the night with your partners, but really it's just a memory game. You do get to earn rewards and stat bonuses for it though. Now let's talk about visuals and audio. The graphics of Eternights are nothing to write home about. We'll give credit where credit is due, as it does set up the end-of-the-world mood with its eerie lighting and foggy atmosphere. However, the 3D models need a little more polish, and the over-the-top anime expressions sometimes aren't the best choice to convey the gravity of the situation. We mentioned problems with the battle animation earlier. Our gripe with it is that it's honestly hard to see what's going on during the skill activation. The effects just kind of overlap each other, and your character movements become difficult to see. These moments are usually where you go, wow, I'm so powerful and cool for being able to do these awesome moves. But it ends up more like, oh, what's happening? The level design is okay, with the city levels usually being the blandest levels. They're just mazes of buildings, streets, and alleyways, all of which feel copy-pasted and reused. The 2D cutscenes, on the other hand, are well animated and were a welcome surprise, especially considering how meh we felt about everything else. Maybe if they had more of these, the game would feel a little more alive and feel like a higher quality game. The audio side of things has a lot less to criticize. The music does a good job of being eerie and mysterious, setting up the mood for a post-apocalyptic setting. The voice acting is also really good. Like, better than it has any right to be. But that's to be expected as big names line up the VA cast for both the English and Japanese. For example, Chani is voiced by Jun Fukushima, known for playing Kazuma from Konosuba.
俺はなんでこんなしょうもない力をもらったんだ。
On the English side, he's played by Alejandro Saab, voice actor for Jing Yuan from Honkai Star Rail. They also have a character named Arya being voiced by Elizabeth Maxwell, the voice behind Sai Nijima from Persona 5, the game that inspired the developer in the first place. It's amazing that they got these prolific voice actors despite being a small indie project. To sum up our thoughts, Eternights is okay. There are a few things that it does well, and a few things that it doesn't. Again, our biggest gripe is the story and all the holes that weren't explained or even talked about. But it has good 2D animation, audio, and character interactions. On the whole though, it's a fairly average game in our eyes. While the price of the game is fairly low at $30, there's a lot of comparable RPGs that occupy this price range. And the competition is tough. Sea of Stars, a game that also came out recently and that we reviewed, has a lot more going for it compared to this game for just $5 more. That's why we're giving Eternights a 6.4. We feel like they spread themselves too thin by trying to do two things at once. They did a lot better with character interactions and everyday scenarios rather than they did creating and fleshing out a modern sci-fi fantasy world. So maybe they can focus on their strengths instead for the next game. We do understand that Studio Sai only had one full-time employee during the entire process of making Eternights, so there's definitely room for improvement. But they've been able to show that they can make a competent game with just one full-time employee. We're sincerely hoping that they can do better now that they have more people working over there for their upcoming second game. Eternights 2, something different altogether? Only time will tell. But we'll be sure to keep an eye and review that one as well. What do you think of Eternights? Tell us below. Like if you liked, subscribe for more video game reviews, news, and all things gaming. Hope to see you in the next video.